So today we're going to talk about some of the things and features that you may not know about Nikon ZF and what Nikon ZF can do. Now guys, I've been using this camera already for probably about maybe good 7-8 months. I purchased as soon as it was released, not because necessarily it was the retro style camera, but because what I saw that Nikon ZF can do, especially because it came with the same processor as Nikon Z9, which is actually recording me right now, and Nikon ZF, which is X-Speed 7. So let's talk about some things that Nikon ZF can do that you may not know about. Now, one of the things that honestly I have discovered personally, the more I've been using the camera, and this is just my honest opinion, it's not sponsored by Nikon, it's not sponsored by any of the features and things that I have attached to this camera, but I just want to share with you and maybe shed some light, if you will, to what I'm finding this Nikon ZF is useful for. Now, the first thing that I did find is that Nikon ZF can actually be rigged out as a video camera. Now, you can certainly go really in a big way and rig out this camera with rails and all kinds of things. But one of the things that I did find was very helpful to have is to be able to get this a SmallRig camera cage. And it is nice because you can attach different peripherals to this one. What you see I have here attached is the small Rode microphone if I'm kind of doing run and gun shoots. I just actually recently did this past weekend for a networking event, and this was actually very useful. I also have attached a small ND filter basically. Again, this is a super helpful to have as well. And other things that you can attach the external monitor. What I have here is some kind of a Ulanzi. I had this for quite a while. A little handle that's attached to a hot shoe basically here at the top. You can certainly get a different handle, attach it to the actual cage. Now the camera is not very heavy. I'm using the 24-70 f2.8 lens. You can certainly use a lighter lens if you wish to. But this is a very simplified way, but because of having this little cage around, it really helps a lot to attach different peripherals and actually make it like a run and gun camera. Now, because this camera has a fully articulated screen, this is actually very helpful for those who are into videography. I recognize there are two types of people in different cams. Those who like just flip up screen, like Nikon Z9, Nikon ZF, and there are people who like a fully articulated screen. Those who are probably do videography. I personally starting to prefer more and more the fully articulated screen because I do more videography as well now, and that actually a very handy feature. So that's the first thing that you may not know what you actually can do very well with Nikon ZF is to be able to rig this out. Now, the second thing why this camera is very helpful for videography specifically is because of the waveform monitor. And what is a waveform monitor? It's basically, it allows you to have a proper exposure whether you're shooting outside or you're shooting indoors. Now, you can certainly use your back of a screen to increase the brightness, but it doesn't necessarily mean it changes the exposure of your subject and what you're shooting. Now, this function is typically available on a lot of high-end cameras, or maybe it's available on external monitors, but now having this feature available in Nikon ZF is pretty handy to have. So the way you find this is you have to go to the menu and go to the pencil menu and scroll down to video G14. Once you get there, it's called the brightness information display. You hit right, and this is where you can either choose to have a display as a histogram, or you can have it shown as a waveform monitor in a small icon or larger icon, depending what you prefer. So once you have selected, now once you are shooting, you can actually cycle through your display menu, and by clicking display, and it will show up at the bottom right, or if you're choosing the larger waveform monitor, you will display in the middle. So that is a very handy to have if you did not know where it's located or how to find it. Now, the third thing that you probably know, but maybe not using it as much or haven't found a use for it, actually to know that Nikon records in 4K 60. Now, one thing you do want to understand is that once you switch to the 4K 60, it switches to the DX mode, and you will see if you have it selected that the whether it's a full frame or DX mode is activated, it actually will flash at the top right. Now, not a big deal for me. If you're shooting run and gun, you can always move back. If you're using a zoom lens, you can always adjust yourself. Now, this is maybe only can be problematic if you're using a prime lens, because especially if you're using on a tripod, and maybe then you can move. But again, not a bad thing, be able to have record in 4K 60 internally. The camera also record, if you're looking for some slow motion footage, you can also switch to 1080, 120 frames per second, and that one will record in full frame. Again, very handy function to have on a $2,000 camera, Nikon ZF. Now, the next thing that I want to talk about is a function that's usually available on the high-end cameras. It's been available on Nikon Z9, it's been available on Nikon Z8, and that's called the HGL. Now, what HGL mode is for, it's a hybrid log gamma, is a high dynamic range standard that's available on Nikon ZF for recording video. HGL is a hybrid format that allows for a wider range of tones in photos and videos with less detail loss in highlights and shadows. When HGL is selected for tone mode, ISO sensitivity is actually limited to 400 minimum. So in order for you to find where HDL mode is located, because it's not as clear, to be honest here, I wish Nikon would have made it a little bit easier, you would have to go to the camera setting, and you need to scroll down to video file type. Once you click on it, actually it'll be buried within this H.265 10-bit MOV mode. Once you click on it, there's a function you can select the either SDR, which is a standard. You can select HDL or N-Log. Again, having this function within this camera is actually very handy if you maybe not using this camera as your primary camera, but you might be using this camera as your camera B or camera C, and having this be able to match your more higher grade cameras where you can do a lot of color grading and also exposure and play with a dynamic range in post-production. That is very valuable function to have. You can talk to a lot of videographers and they will tell you that shooting in HDL or maybe N-Log or S-Log if you're shooting on Sony or any other cameras, it's a really great function to have. All right, so now let's talk a little bit about photography. So far, we've been talking only about the video functions that you maybe knew or maybe did not know the Nikon ZF had. Now let's talk about the photo functions. So one of the functions that I really love, especially that got carried from the professional grade camera, so maybe more like flagship cameras, not like Nikon Z9 or Nikon Z8, is actually having when you're in a shooting menu, be able to shoot in 3D mode. I love this function because whenever you're shooting sports, you need to be able to follow the subject. And it is a misconception that Nikon ZF cannot be used for sports photography. I personally used it. I shot my kids playing soccer, and really, I love that function. Okay, I feel like it works much better than any other function when it comes to be able to follow subject. Okay, having a 3D function on Nikon ZF and using it for sports photography may not be as ideal, I'll be honest, for bird photography. However, if you are a bird photographer and if you have a lot of experience with Nikon ZF, I would love to hear from you in the comments below what you personally think. But for sports photography, following subject, maybe following a vehicle, and using this 3D mode is excellent on Nikon ZF. And I suggest that you try to use it more often than maybe you have. All right, the next feature that I want to talk about is actually a pre-release capture. Now, while Nikon ZF can shoot in 14 frames per second in mechanical shutter, you can nail the decisive moment with 14 frames per second continuous shooting using Nikon ZF mechanical shutter, which has been tested for up to 200,000 cycles. Or you can activate a C30 plus function for up to 30 frames per second using a silent electronic shutter. And the pre-release caption option is available under the pencil menu, and then you want to scroll down to D3, and you can select if you're looking to use it, and you can select if you want to use it for maybe 0.3 seconds or half a second or even a full second. Again, if you're using for maybe bird photography or maybe using for sports photography, the pre-release option is available also on Nikon ZF, not only on Nikon Z9, not only on Nikon Z8, and not only on Nikon Z6 III, but also on Nikon ZF. Really awesome function. If you haven't used it, I highly suggest. Again, you just saw it where it's located. You can turn it on, you can turn it off. You can actually have this function be pre-selected for you under the I menu. You know, you can have it selected here so you can quickly find it if you lost it. But again, try to using pre-release option on Nikon ZF, and I think you'll find it very, very useful. And the last thing that I want to talk about here that's also available, and I don't really hear a lot of people talk about, and this is a pretty neat function. I believe this function last time was available on Nikon D5300 or maybe 5500, I can't remember right now. But what this function is where you can use a touch control while shooting through the EVF. So while shooting through the viewfinder, you can simultaneously use the ZF's touch screen to move focus points, select a different subject to track, toggle between display modes, and all without ever taking your eyes off the scene. Now, this function is available under the pencil menu. So let's go back to the pencil menu again, and it's under the F4. So if you scroll down to F4, it's called Touch FN. And once you select it here, you can use different area of the screen. Now, there are different sections of the screen that you can use, either top right quadrant, you can use the right half, you can use left half, you can use the bottom left quadrant, whichever is easier for you. Now, you can certainly use the back of a screen and take photographs, but if you're shooting it during the daylight where you need to be looking through the EVF, you can actually use your thumb to move your focus point. And now what I personally found is most of the time what works for me is the right half. Okay, so again, it's located under the F4 menu. See if it works for you. Not many people are actually talking about it, that you can use Nikon ZF, because the idea is to be able to use this retro camera in a fashion that people used to use in the past. So maybe that's why they added that function to this camera. I'm not sure. But again, there's a lot of other things that are buried in this camera that, you know, after you start using it and you're finding, oh, this is a helpful function. Oh, this is a great function. I want to try to use this or that. So I want to kind of be able to shed some light on some of the functions that maybe you did not know existed in Nikon ZF. Now, this camera is packed with a ton of modern features that a professional photographer or videographer would use. If this may not be your primary camera for commercial shoots and sports photography at Olympics, this camera can certainly be used as a B or C camera. So guys, are there any other features that you think might be helpful for other Nikon ZF users? Please let me know in the comments below. Maybe I haven't spoken about something that's even more useful than what I covered here in this video. I would love to hear from you what you think is helpful, that maybe you did not know what's existed in this camera before and now you know, and how you can use it. Now guys, if you found that any of this information has been helpful so far, I would love to see that if you can give me a thumbs up and give me a like, because it allows me to make more videos like this for viewers like you.